Thank you. Hello, everyone, again.
Morning.
Good morning. So for this session today, if you do have questions, I don't know how many of you were in the last session we had on our makeover for the DE department. Now, an offshoot is the Center for Innovative Learning and Teaching. But I am starting to recognize many faces, so this is fantastic. Thank you for going into this next session with us. Just in the last session, it was just so helpful and really engaging to have questions throughout. And so we'll really do our best to address questions you have throughout the presentation. And then please feel free to use the chat as well. And we have some folks helping us to monitor the chat. And then you'll have an opportunity to post other questions too after the presentation. So if I have not met you before, my name is Jody Steele. I'm the Director of Distance Education and Instructional Technology. I am starting my 6th year at Fresno City. I'm very happy to say that. I did spend 15 years teaching history at Merced Community College. So I've been in the system for 23 years. And I just use really great face cream. People usually ask me that. So I could tell you what it is. But welcome all. And joining me is John Wilson, whom I believe most people know. John, you want to introduce yourself? More about what you do?
Hi, I'm John Wilson. I am the Academic Technology System Specialist here at Fresno City College. And that means I just work with Canvas and support faculty and doing what we do. And I've been with the Fresno City College for 22 years now. So I've been around when online learning wasn't a thing, and then it became a thing with web pages, and then we got into Blackboard, and now we're into Canvas. So it's cool to see how much it's grown, and to see what happened with COVID, to see all the people that have got not only exposed to online learning, but found value in it. And so it's just great. Thanks for being here.
Wow, I guess in 2.5 more years, we can say that we have 50 years of experience. Wow. That's amazing. So yes, thank you. Welcome all. We're sharing with you kind of an advanced feature in Canvas, but at the same time, it's probably something you are familiar with, just maybe not aware. So the title of this presentation is "What is an LTI in Canvas and how do I use one?" Does anybody want to take a shot at what LTI stands for? Who did their homework?
I'm going to guess, just based on reading in here, learning technology information.
Ooh, nice, Tina.
It's in the title somewhere. Was I
right? There's maybe a little bit. You're warm. Anybody else want to take a shot at it? All right.
Learning technology. No, learning tools. Okay, never mind.
No, that was good too. We're trying to build some of those synapses in your brain, you know, having you think about something differently.
How about learning tool integration?
Ooh, wow, that's really good, Sylvia. Excellent. You know what, to be honest, I usually have to look up what it means too. I could just sound, yeah, I could really sound fancy. Go, oh yeah, you don't know what an LTI is? Now what fun would that be? So an LTI is a fancy way of saying those two things that you did say. I'm going to just show you the definition first here. Yeah, that word doesn't flow off the tongue very easily, huh? Interoperability. No quiz on this one, no quiz. But with that, I'm going to go back to what is an LTI. in Canvas, and how do I use them? This is what our presentation is going to include today. We'll talk about what a learning tool interoperability is. There are several different types. There are some concerns about using LTIs, which will address and empower you to evaluate those tools, and not only evaluate them, but how we can address some of those concerns. And then we'll also introduce you to what LTIs we already have available at Fresno City, how you can enable those tools in your course, and then who do you contact for support or for more information. Sound good? All right. So learning tools interop. You say it better, John, because it's in your area.
Yeah, I think you just have to say it fast. Interoperability. Just say it like don't let your mind think about it or try to pronounce it.
Now that you're all here, I can just say LTI, right? We're all on the same team there. So yeah, this is a tool that integrates with Canvas. That's not a part of Canvas, but they play well together. These are not to be confused with an app on your phone. Apps on our phone, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll try things out, like a game will catch my attention. I really want to save the king from the flames a couple of times, game. I worry about that just a little bit because of my experience with Canvas and security and privacy, cyber hacking. So I don't really do that as much anymore unless I really want to download something onto my phone and it's trusted. So I'll actually look at the background form now. That's just how far I've come. But these can be referred to as third-party applications. We will show you some of them as we move forward. And I like what Jason Thomas put this analogy into the virtual hub for faculty, which is where you'll find this presentation and our others too. But the information on LTIs is in there. And I really like what the context that he put it in, and that he said to think of Canvas as your home base, and LTIs are your cable, internet, service, gas, electricity, garbage recycling, etc. So that really helps, I think, to put it into context. All right. So John, you're going to talk about the types, right? And I'm going to
so now that Canvas operates on this LTI platform, right, it allows all of these other applications or tools or different things to seamlessly connect to Canvas, right? And inside of that, it opens this whole world of stuff, right? So the different types that we broke it down into are these publisher tools, which are like McGraw-Hill, Pearson, Revel, MyLab. All those things are available and quickly connect to Canvas into your classroom. There's also like applications that we talk about, like Flipgrid, Perusall, Zoom we're all familiar with lately, right? And how Zoom has a presence in the web, it has a presence in mobile, and it has a presence in Canvas. So the way that all of those look the same and talk together and do is all based on this LTI, right? So now it's all coming together. So now that we know how the apps like talk, we can then open this whole world of stuff that we can connect to our classroom. So the other group there is Canvas enhancements and feature options. So some of these are installed as this app level LTI, but they are features inside of Canvas. And the one that everyone I think is familiar with is Canvas Studio. So even though it uses the same technology of installing an app like you can do for your classroom, we don't really control those because they're developed by Canvas, they're installed by Canvas, they're just in our system, although they are using the same technology and the same terminology. So the three things that I wanted to point out here is that most of these provide a way for single sign-on. So what that means is the student doesn't have to log into a separate system. They log into Canvas, whatever app you have installed, they quickly go over to that other app. Some provide a way to pass score information back and forth between the app and Canvas. So a student can go to an online activity, take a quiz, an assignment, homework, whatever it is, do it in that platform. When they're finished, that score will transfer back to the Canvas gradebook. And again, that just depends on publisher, book, thing that you're using. And I did want to point out that all of them interact with our student information in some way. And that's where the concerns start to come, right? Because it's like, wait a minute, I just want them to do the activity and give me the grade, right? But are we thinking about the impact that the rest of that stuff might have by having those people, interact with our system? So to point out some of those concerns, right? We got a list here, and we're talking about what information is going back and forth. For the most part, it's email address, it's ID number, and it's score and grade, right? But as that information is going back and forth, we have to stop and say, wait a minute, before we set this up, there's some stuff we have to think about, right? So here's this list of stuff that we came up with. And basically we start right out the gate with privacy and FERPA, right? We have to make sure that all this is legal and everything's cool. The next level is security, right? We don't want students in as a teacher and doing teacher stuff. And we don't want, other people messing with things, and we don't want that information out. We want to have a real keen eye for our universal design and accessibility, and make sure that everything that we're doing, with that content, with that publisher, with that tool is focused on that, because some vendors do not put a lot of priority in making sure their products are completely accessible. They make sure they're sellable and they make sure they're usable in a classroom, but not always accessible. So we have to make sure when we're putting these apps into our classrooms and into our system that we're thinking about that ahead of time, right? Cost always comes up because everything's free for the first one, right? The vendor, the book publishers, they'll all give you the free stuff. But then once we get it implemented at a level, then all of a sudden it gets very expensive. And we just have to think about that ahead of time. If this is something that we're going to use and it's going to have an impact in a great way for our students and it's worth the cost, let's fund it, let's get the money, and let's do it, right? If this is some cool tool that I just want to see if it'll work in my class, let's play with that in a sandbox and do something else with that, and let's not impact like student lives with that, right? So that's the tools and the stuff that we're working with. So
Wait,
level
so
of
John,
installation.
there's no free puppies?
Yeah. So the level of installation is something we wanted to point out too. So the way that our system is set up, we are set up at a district, then a college, then a division, then a department, then a course, right? So you can we install backwards. We start at the course, right? We want you as a teacher to be able to solve your problem, install your app by yourself, get it done, installed, right? That's at the course level. If it needs to be installed at a division or a department or at a campus level, that's where we really need to start evaluating these other criteria, right? And some apps that you'll work with a vendor or a publisher, and they'll say, yeah, we can install that app in your class, no problem, it's great, it works great. Well, then when they work with me, they try to install it all the way at the top because they want their product to have the most impact across the campus. With a product, McGraw-Hill's and Pearson's and groups like that, they have an impact across the whole campus. So it makes sense to put those at that level. Other products, it makes way more sense just to put it at your classroom. So understand there is a difference in where the app gets installed and the amount of concern or thought that goes into all of that, right? The other couple of pieces here are just the copyright and the ownership and the terms of service and license agreements. These are all the things that, it's the thousands of pages that everyone just buzzes by and we all hit accept and we hit go. But when you're dealing with some of these vendors and some of this material and some of the stuff, it can get a little slippery when you're dealing with who owns what and what they can do with stuff that students have turned in and all that kind of stuff. So we just need to think about it ahead of time. So I'll turn it over to Jody to elaborate.
Yeah, thank you, John. I'm looking at the chat too and some questions in here, and I'm so glad that we can answer some of these. I really like the example, I think it was Chelsea that you talked about. And of course, yeah, PowerPoint definitely available later, not only for through professional development, but we'll put it in our faculty hub as well. The question was about Word, Microsoft Word and Google Docs. You know, that is one of that's a really high consideration, that when a student creates something in a Google Doc and then they share it as a Word document, not all of the mechanics of the paper transfer over. And so recognizing that, right, is part of using that tool, that there are very few tools that are perfect. But if we're aware that a student using a Google Doc, when they share it with you as a Word doc, that it will change it, then you can be aware not to penalize the student for that error and work around it. It's the same thing with accessibility. If a tool requires it requires a PC or a laptop to run it because of the processor, then we just need to inform students ahead of time of what is required. And as an institution, we need to help them have access to that device, if that's what the tool is that we're using, and also that we remediate any tool that we're using for accessibility ahead of time. Because if it is known to have a barrier, then we need to be prepared to address that barrier in a quick amount of time so that that student does not lose out and be put in a deficit for not having equal access. So I
That was
hope
a fantastic answer, Jody. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Is there anything I can do though from my end? Because I'll have Google Docs and then the Microsoft Office suite available for the students to use, but I notice if they submit it via Word document, it comes out fine. But if they submit it via Google Docs, it does come out where the formatting is messed up. Is there anything I can do from my end to alleviate that from happening? Or
you know, we can right, we do the best that we can. I don't know about you, but and maybe some of you do use a Mac PC, they don't speak the same language, right? And so even on those two devices, which we may have a personal preference for, they don't operate the same. Neither does Android and iOS, right? That's why they have different products out there. So you know, awareness is one step. When it comes to those documents, though, it's hard to come up with a foolproof solution, to be honest. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Chromebooks do not have a processor. It's just, those are meant to be used with the web and cloud-based services. So if a student has a Chromebook, they're really limited in the kind of tools that they can use and the processing ability. But we saw this, you know, everyone was just trying to get a hold of whatever equipment they could last year. And sometimes it was Chromebooks, iPads, and laptops. My son actually had an iPad that he was using for his first class in the summer of 2020 with a keyboard. I encourage you to try it sometime. If your students are using one of those devices, I was frustrated as heck when he was using Word. To even do line spacing, you had to highlight the text and then find it up here in the menu to click for line spacing, and you had to recognize the icon for it. It frustrated the heck out of me. And if I was writing a paper and I was that frustrated, it would definitely have an impact on my my demonstration of learning outcomes. As far as how can you remediate those, maybe not everyone knows that students have access to Microsoft Office for free. We have that in the hub where students can go and download it, add it to their devices. You can also integrate Google and Microsoft into Canvas. Tammy Camacho has done a lot with the conversion of those files. So perhaps we should have her do a session on the differences so we can raise that awareness. Because I know you all are saying, yeah, use whatever tool that is best for you. You know, if it's Google, if it's Word, great. And we're trying to accommodate the students, but we also don't want to penalize them for things that are not under their control. That's a really bad answer, but I think it speaks to the fact that any tool that we're using, there are concerns. They are complex. You know, when you talk about transferring information from here to there, it's amazing that it works so efficiently, but not 100% in all cases.
Can the Chromebook run the Microsoft Suite?
It does so in the cloud, right? John, can you put that in more simpler terms so I don't muck it up?
I'm sorry, what was the question again? I was responding to chat.
On a Chromebook, they can use Microsoft Word. It's in the cloud, right?
Yeah. They can use the Office 365 suite. They can use it on the cloud, their mobile device. Basically, the Chromebook is a big mobile, right? So solid state chips and all that stuff. So yeah, all that'll work.
Yeah, so what that means is they can't save it on their device, you know, as like a hard copy on their device. They save it into these cloud-based systems, which is what Google and Word are, where you can, you know, collaborate on things. We know that in the schools, a lot of them are Google schools. It's definitely in a student's best interest to learn both, you know, but again, not to penalize them for things that are out of their control. Is there anything? Yes, a Porto. That was kind of a little failed experiment from what I understand. Yes, thank you, Rio. Processing versus processor. See, I knew I would muck that up. Okay, so we're going to move on. There are a lot of nuances. So as far as the LTI request process at Fresno City College, we do have a process. And I can say that I am so thankful that we had some foresight on this. We've had a process since 2018. And when COVID forced everyone to go online, there was some impulse buying or some thoughts of a heavy reliance on tools. If you saw the faculty hub, you'll see that there's a statement on the front. That's my statement, that technology doesn't teach, teachers do. And so an app or a tool is only as effective as you make it. You know, and we tend to have a whole toolbox, but if a tool is too complicated to be used right out the go, then we need to provide some support in how to use that tool for you and your students so that it does help improve learning, but it doesn't hinder it. It is, I mean, to look towards tools is really natural when you're online. There's the cool factor too, you know, but there's also tool fatigue for you and your students. When COVID came and there were requests to add many new tools, we kind of said, you know, hold on a second here, because students who were now all online and didn't have the same devices and had 5 classes, if each of you were using a new tool in addition to Canvas, I mean, think about the weight of that getting in the way of learning your discipline stuff. So it's not to be mean or, you know, for the joy of saying no. It's saying let's look at it, and then how can we implement it. I don't know about you all, but I have tried tools one time, and I tried it with my live students, and then I didn't use it again. And that wasn't really fair to them or myself. So we really want to help cut down on tool fatigue, which is why we're also helping in the area of pedagogy, you know, how to teach and learn effectively online, because it's not the same as in the classroom. Preaching to the choir on that here, but hopefully that brings some more sense to this process. So that process that I was talking about, the digital procurement rubric, we've had that since 2018, and I'm going to share a little bit of it here with you. We asked that we're calling the person a sponsor because we do get requests from staff and faculty, and sometimes students will ask for certain tools to be used. So we ask that whoever is sponsoring that tool or wants to look at it, that they use the digital procurement rubric to have a look at it, kind of do a review of that tool. Then you can work with the vendor to submit the request form through the hub. That's where you'll find this. And I'll tell you that sometimes it's gotten to the vendor, here, fill out this form. And because they can't answer the questions fully about accessibility or what device it works on, that's about where it goes. It stops right there. There are a lot of vendors that are like used car salesmen, and they only sell Cadillacs. So we're here to help protect you because we value your time and your energy, and we have the expertise to help evaluate these tools. This is not unique to Fresno City either. I was actually on a statewide LTI review process where other colleges were having these same questions. And so we're collaborating now, because if I'm examining Flipgrid, you know, for this criteria, why should each college have to do that? Right? So we're sharing those. And on the Chancellor's Office website, I didn't pull up the link here, but they have that breakdown. They also have each of the contracts. So like for NetTutor, they have that contract. So if you ever have trouble sleeping and you'd like a 50-page document, you can open that up, and probably by paragraph 2, you'd be out. They're really boring. And then most of the applications, if you want to try them out, we can install it in a sandbox, and you know, you and either just you or some of your peers, if you want to play with it in there, you can do so. And then of course, and then the request form, when it's submitted after you've tried it out, that needs to be submitted to align with book order due dates. Installing an application isn't the same as putting it on your phone. For us in the back end, it does take some work and some negotiating with our system to have it installed correctly and making sure that it will work the way that a vendor says. So we have had some folks ask us, you know, the first day of the semester or a couple of days before to install an app, and unfortunately, we just can't do that. We just don't have the time or support to examine a tool that quickly. So, and to provide the support for teaching and learning. So again, it's not to be mean. It's just trying to be responsible in our in the tools that we adopt. This is what one of the rubrics looks like here. There's several of them out there, and in fact, at the end of this presentation, I put a reference, sort of like a reference resource if you want to look at any of these and how other colleges and universities apply it. This is called a Patagogy Wheel. And does anyone know why it's called Patagogy, not pedagogy? That's not a typo. Sarah, I see you're unmuted.
Oh, that was an accident.
Oh, anybody, you can unmute yourself and take a shot at why this is called a Patagogy wheel.
Is it for iPads and tablets?
Oh, that's good, Michael. Yes, that's exactly it. So there is another wheel like this, but this one came out, gosh, probably 10 years ago. It's gone through a couple of iterations, but I know it's hard to see on here, but it's based on Bloom's taxonomy. So when you look at your course objectives or learning unit objectives, and you go into the middle here, you see evaluate, analyze, apply, remember, understand, create. And then as you go out through the wheel, these are action words around here. And then depending on where you've come, they'll have apps that will connect to those objectives. And so when looking at a tool, you really should think about objectives first and how a tool fits to meet those needs rather than the reverse. Oh, I really like Padlet. I'm going to use it. Okay, but connecting it to an outcome or what you'd like it to accomplish to help with maybe creating content from a student perspective. They're turning in like a multimedia presentation or something like that. It's really helpful to recommend a specific tool for them to use if they're doing like a multimedia presentation or something. This rubric here has some of the key points for looking at a tool. Some of these are quite lengthy for that type of evaluation. Here, there's a functionality, which is a fancy way of saying how will it be installed? Is it easy to use? Is there support from the vendor? Is it accessible? There's all of those types of categories to consider. So I'm gonna have you read this quote. I'll give you a second here to read this quote. So this is from a book that I have from Nelson and Goodson from 1999, and it's called Best Online Teaching Practices. You can see that this quote is from 1999. Technology's been around for a long time. So has adult learning theory and evidence-based research around online teaching. In fact, our instructional designer has a master's in instructional design. So this as a discipline has really expanded and happily so. So research has built upon those earlier discoveries. Nelson and Goodson in that particular work, they look at effective practices, including how to formulate your syllabus, and partnering that with course information. And this particular quote, though, about tool usage, I find it very informative because they advise that if there is a steep learning curve for a tool, that it's your learning curve to learn how to use it as it is for your student. And the quote just supports the other things that I was saying about tool fatigue and the tax it takes on cognitive load for both you and your students. So with that, this is the only rubric that I could get to fit on one page. For digital procurement is the only rubric I could get to fit on one page. But just some of the highlights here, and this will be available in the hub. And what the intention is here is just to educate all of us on the responsible procurement process for digital tools. And so you see here security. Do you guys remember the security issue with Zoom? What was happening there? You can unmute yourself and
bombing. People were jumping in who weren't supposed to be there.
right. Yeah, Zoom bombing was happening not on a large scale, but certainly enough that we didn't want it to happen at all. So did that mean we stopped using Zoom? No. It meant that we got smarter using it with our settings, with waiting rooms, with security, passwords. And now we have it extra secure by having it in our system as an LTI, right? So you have to be logged in behind that wall in order to have access to Zoom. So see, those are the accommodations that we've made to work around the potential security issues. And Zoom as a company did that too. Privacy, which is FERPA compliance, some of the tools, if you have students who are interacting with each other, but they're not in the same course section, that's a violation of FERPA. When students register for a course, they're registering just for that course and to be active with those students. So if you use a tool, again, doesn't mean don't use that. It means if you use a tool that you parcel out your students by course to maintain that FERPA and privacy. Of course, there's legal, and I forgot to point out that there's excellent, acceptable, and unacceptable. So you can read what are some of the deep concerns that would cause us to be very critical of adopting a particular application, especially sharing student information. We're not going to help them with that. Data sharing, ownership, economics, that's about, we already mentioned that there's no free puppies. And how much will it cost later to fund it? This is a curious one too. John spoke to it a little bit, that if you want to use a tool and then when and we're all good to go and we go to put it in our system, they will say something like, oh, it's just for enterprise licensing. That means it has to be installed at the state center level. And if the cost is based on FTES, you can imagine how much more expensive that is at the top here than it is per course. Sneaky, right? They're sneaky. But they'll bring you donuts and, I don't get the donuts or gift cards because they don't usually like me that way. So pedagogical impacts on your teaching and learning, technical considerations. This one's really big. It's become very surprising that not every tool works seamlessly across devices, especially not mobile. So those are things to consider. And again, not a deal breaker, right? If digital arts needs to use, Adobe, which requires a really fast processor and has to have this power behind it, then when we check out equipment to students, we need to make sure that the students in that course get laptops, right? And we know that ahead of time so that the students have the tools they need to be successful in the class, and no surprise there. We like it when the vendor has their own support too, when they do their own training and they offer a separate support line. If you use a third-party tool that is not integrated in Canvas, our help desk and even our team here, we can't help the students because we can't get to it. We can't see it. So that's also something to consider. And of course, accessibility. There are known issues of accessibility with some of the tools. And again, not a deal breaker. We just have to be prepared to provide the student equal access to that environment that doesn't have an impact on their ability to be successful in the course. So So how do I use LTIs in Canvas? There's lots of different tools, right? So we're going to look at what LTIs are available at Fresno, how do you enable them, and how do you get more information? Before I go into that, do you all have any questions that you want to unmute yourself and see if John or I can answer them for you? Is this all making sense? Do I need to clarify anything at this point?
Jody, there's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Says, I've used Studio intensively, but the downside of it is accessibility to students with slow internet. 720 resolution was used. Do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, so that is definitely something that has been a topic for equity. You know, there has been there's been a lot of money and effort put into extending access, internet access, high-speed internet access. And last year we were really at a disadvantage because we couldn't recommend our learning labs for students, right? Or they didn't have the ability to go to somewhere else to where they could use high-speed internet or a faster device. And that's part of the challenges of serving our student population is economics. But yet we're an open institution. Our mission includes that everyone can learn and should be given the opportunity to learn in a quality environment. So those things are tough to remediate because how do we know? I have an example of a digital, what I call it, digital equity statement that's in the hub that I encourage you to use something, that one or another statement, encouraging students that if they have issues like that, that you will work with them and try to help find a different environment or different piece of equipment that will help them be successful. It's very embarrassing for students. You may have seen that in your own classrooms when some students had the hard copy of the book and another student didn't have the book. That kind of inequitable material obtainment is difficult. It's really difficult. So I don't have a hard and fast answer for that, except for flexibility, understanding, and asking students, being encouraging of students that we will do our best to help them get what they need to be successful. Any other questions? Okay, so John, I think that this is your area, right?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go. So hopefully we've done a little bit to raise some awareness to let you know that the tools that you're going to use in your classroom have a little bit more impact than just this one little tool. It may be your division, a department, it may be bigger at the campus, it may involve policies and forms and all that stuff, but at least we all know about it now, right? So let's get to the fun part where we actually get into Canvas and like turn stuff on and do, right? So by default, we have some apps that are already installed in Canvas. And I'm gonna start with just saying Zoom right out the gate so that we're all familiar with Zoom. We realize Zoom is installed at the district, right? So I talked earlier about we have the district, the campus, division, department, course. So Zoom is way up there. So that's one that benefits all of us and it's in all of our classrooms and we can use it. Well, there's also some other stuff that's there. And this slide demonstrates that there's some apps that are installed by default at the Fresno City College level that you as a teacher, you don't have to install the app. You still might need some credential from the application itself or the publisher or whatever the app is. but you don't have to go through the install part. We've already done that inside of our system. So you'll see a list here, and don't worry about writing these down. I'm going to show you more as we go on, but I just want for visual, I just want you to see if there's some different between Fresno City College and there's some different between State Center. So here's a list of some of the stuff that's at State Center, and you'll see, you know, some of the players, the Google, the Office 365, right? Wiley, Pearson, McGraw-Hill, a lot of those are there, right? We all have that. YouTube, that's there too. So here's a list of all the apps that we have installed inside of Fresno. And I was hoping to have all the cool graphics and all that stuff to go along with them, but if you all just want to take a second and just look at it, there's a lot of titles there. Some are, remember those categories we were talking about earlier, some are publisher tools, some are, you know, classroom tools, enhancements, and then other parts are Canvas features. So, so as we move forward with our faculty hub and our student hub, we have the digital tools section right now that has about 6 or 7 titles in both that match, right? So there's a Zoom guide for students, there's a Zoom guide for faculty inside of both hubs, right? The ultimate goal is to have all of these titles, right, listed to some kind of resource, whether it's a resource that we create and screen capture and that kind of stuff, or it's the vendor's own training material and that kind of stuff. But in the faculty hub, all of these resources will have support behind them, so that if you as a teacher want to go in and add one of these, or you hear at a conference, you see somebody demonstrate or something else, you'll know, hey, that's already in our system. I can just go log in and turn it on, or you'll learn, okay, I need to go turn that other thing on. So, so with that list of apps there,
and I just want to piggyback on what you just said there, John, because we do have that happen. Probably the one that I can think of off the top of my head is there's Hypothesis and Perusall. Those apps have the same intention, and that is to provide students with a way to edit, take notes, you know, highlight online materials if they're reading something online. But that has to be enabled in your course. So I get a lot of email from vendors, you know, buy my product, this is great, you should use your CARES money for this. When they start off by telling us how we should use our money, that's really a negative thing for me. I don't think that a vendor should be telling us how to teach our students by adding these third-party applications to their book material, and I don't believe they should be telling us how to spend our CARES money. That's really annoying because they're not the experts. You guys are, we are, but they are in sales. So we may already have a tool that that you're looking for. So we're gonna do a better job of adding these to the digital toolbox. We just have a few here. I remember, was it yesterday? In some, there was a question about Studio, you know, why isn't it in the permanently in the navigation? And that's speaking to this placement of applications. So Studio is not used by our sister colleges in our district. Fresno City did adopt it as a tool that meets the needs of our faculty, especially to caption their videos themselves and to integrate engagement with quizzes and things inside their videos. So we adopted it from that process. But since it's not used at the district level by our other sister colleges, it limits where we can put it in Canvas. So that's the reason. Did I steal your thunder on any of that, John?
No. That was perfect. That all ties together, though. I think we're driving it home that there's different levels of those installations, and we just need to be aware of them and take care of them before we do. Yeah, so these are all the apps that we have in there now. Like I said, we're moving forward with our hubs to put this support information on. Jody, you can show that next slide. Inside, it's not just going to be in the faculty hub, right? We're really making a point to have the guide in both. There's going to be a student guide in the student hub and a faculty guide in the faculty hub. And it's the same with the resources wherever they need to direct. So we want you as faculty to be confident that, like, if you're using Zoom, that you can tell your students, go to the student hub and look at that Zoom guide. That's good information there. And what's nice, I think what's nice, I'll just speak for myself, is that you as faculty all have access to the student hub. So you can go look at the guide and you can say, oh, that's a good guide, I want to use that, right? So ultimately that's the goal. So let's move forward and let's start talking about how do we like turn apps on inside of our class, right? So the answer to that is it depends. So when we were talking earlier about those different types of apps that some use singles or most use, or all of them use single sign-on, some do grades, right? Well, that's kind of a difference too in how you set the app up inside of your course. For the most part, the easiest way to set everything up is if you go to your course and you go to settings and you go to apps, you're going to see a list of a bunch of apps. And before we move, I'm going to put a link in the chat.
I can, maybe I could just show one of our courses, John, so that it's.
Yeah, you can too.
Yeah.
Well, Jody's pulling that up. Well, while earlier we were talking about the LTI, right? And what's kind of funny in computer world is, like, we're so hung up on acronyms that everything has to be precise and be what it means, and we'll correct you when you say something wrong, right? Like that's the computer guy's role. But what's funny is LTI and app have become pretty much like synonymous inside of Canvas. LTI technically is just the platform or the standard that is used. It's still an app, right? But as everything's been developed, these two words mean the same thing. So as all of this works, and we need to get that app, that LTI, that thing installed inside of Canvas, go ahead and go to the settings and go to the App Center, Jody.
Okay. So this is in all of your courses. You can see it, right? I always ask that. I want to make sure. Okay.
So go to apps. So just hold right here. So the link that I just put in the chat, the EDU App Center, this is where all this kind of ties together. This catalog that you see inside of our instance of Canvas, all of these apps, they've already gone through an LTI vetting process to certify that they work with Canvas, right? So there's a company, the IMS Global Standard is this company that basically manages this LTI standard. All of these application developers went through them to make sure, hey, my application works with Canvas and it meets the security, the privacy, the accessibility, all those rules that they have, right? So if you look in that EDU App Center and you go find the app that you want to use, you should find support information, accessibility information, privacy information, or at least a link to the vendor's website to tell you here is that information, right? And there is a culture amongst all these vendors, especially when they're dealing with California community colleges, that they know they need to provide privacy, security, accessibility, all that information to us because we're all asking for it. So depending on who you get to in the whole conversation from that EDU App Center, you could get a lot of that information like ahead of time, right? And most importantly, I think, is the support information that they put there to the vendor's website. So, so that's where all those apps are. That's where all those standards get defined. That's where all that stuff works, right? But you want to put one of these inside of your class. And Jody's looking right now at the installed versions. So all of these are in your class right now. And to turn these on, it's just a matter of either going to the navigation and enabling it for Google Apps, for instance.
Yeah, this is
down in the disabled section and it just needs to be enabled. And that then enables the LTI, the app, the tool to work inside of your course.
And if I could point out too, that this is how you select what's in your, this is the course navigation. So this is global, this is course. And so if you want to hide something, these show you that they're hidden, that they're down here, right? So you can't see them. If you click on student view, you wouldn't see any of these with the I crossed out. But if you do want to bring something else up, you know, like let's say my lab, you just click and you drag it up here. And then you have to click save. Same with simple syllabus or the regular syllabus tool. You should only have one of those showing. Otherwise, you know, somebody would try to click both, but you can hide the one that you're not using. And so if I go to my home page now, you'll see that it's showing right here. Okay, I know that's a foundational feature, but sometimes I even forget how to do it because I don't do that a lot. So I'm going to change it back now. Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, where can I drive you next, John?
Go back to settings and go back to apps.
Okay.
So well, this is the biggest, just hit add an app when you get to the app part.
Okay.
Hit view app configurations. So hit add an app.
This one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go back to the app center. I'm sorry. The brown button or the gray button, app center.
Okay.
So just click on one of those, any one of those, just click on them.
Okay.
So if you decided you want to install this app, you click on it. Now hit the add an app button. And this is the key to adding all apps inside of Canvas, right? Is the consumer key and the shared secret. Now that website that I just put in chat, the EDU App Center, when you go look for your app, so if you go look for a claim and you look in that EDU App Center, there'll be directions in that App Center on how to get a key and secret. My office, we don't have a big library of all these apps and the keys and secrets. Excuse me. They're individual to the app or they're individual to the person. So if you as a person are using, let's say, Flipgrid, there's nothing that I can do at the district or at the campus level to enable Flipgrid for your class, right? The tool's installed in our system. You as a teacher have to go into the app and you have to add this key and secret, right? The key and secret comes from the settings inside of your Flipgrid. And inside of each course inside of Flipgrid, there's going to be a consumer key and a shared secret that'll be in a section for integrations, or sometimes it'll say Canvas integrations. So back to what I was saying earlier about it depends. It really depends on your app. So the My Lab that Jody just turned on, we have a key and a secret defined with My Lab at State Center that says all these colleges below us use the My Lab products, right? So then when you come in and click the tool for My Lab, it's just using your email address, right? I'm John.Wilson at Fresno City College. Well, your book rep should have worked with you and you set up a John.Wilson at Fresno City College account at Pearson and you configured your book or the My Lab thing. You configured all your stuff there, right? So once you turn the app on and you click it, the two connect, and then now your My Lab world is inside of Canvas, right? Same way with Flipgrid. Once that key and secret are connected, that core or the classroom inside of Flipgrid is now connected to that classroom inside of Canvas, and the two things talk. So those levels of information that go back and forth can vary, right? Because it can be just the student was there, the student wasn't there, the student scored 9 out of 10, you know, so there's like different levels of that. But this is like the heartbeat of all of it is this key and secret. And it's knowing really where to get those and what to do with them. So if you reach out to somebody like a claim and you say, hey, we want a claim in our department or whatever, that's when something might escalate to where we start to need forms and the rubric and the policy looking at it, because it's going to, that key and secret is going to have a bigger impact than just your course.
John, it's Susie. Hi.
Yeah.
Could you, you may have sent the link out privately. Could you put that in the chat again?
Oh, you know what? I sent it to Eddie Tostado. Hold on. Maybe Eddie can send it to everybody.
Thank you, John. Thank
I'm
you.
kidding. Like a dork now. I just talked about all that and nobody saw it. It's like Bigfoot. I swear it's there. Bigfoot. EDU App Center, it's there. But it's really cool because this, you know, if we want to talk about 1999, right? Like I remember installing Office after I installed Windows 95 with like 13 floppy disks, right? And I remember reading an article like in Wired magazine that said Microsoft is going to transition all their Office away from like a desktop client. It's all going to be on the internet and people are going to pay subscriptions and they're going to stop paying for CDs and floppy disks and all that stuff. And I remember being computer guys, we all looked at each other, that's not going to happen. The internet's not big enough. They can't handle, they can't do all that stuff. And here it is, you know, 2021, I don't even have a floppy or a disk drive of any kind on my laptop right now, right? Like everything's coming off the internet and it's just magical. So it's really cool that there's groups out there that said, hey, if we're going to make all this happen across the internet, let's standardize it and make it simple. So a lot of these things that we're talking about, the security, the privacy, the single sign-on, the IP addresses, like all that stuff, it like now it's just magically happening and it's working. And now you as a teacher, you can just go say, hey, I want Flipgrid, and you can turn on Flipgrid and it just works, where you don't need a guy like me to come out with 13 floppy disks and a screwdriver, you know, and crawl under the desk and try to figure it out and work on it. And, you know, it's a whole different world now with that. It's boom, here's your app, here's your classroom, let's start learning. So it's good.
You know, I don't know about you all, but I've wondered why or when they're going to change the save button, you know, for documents. It's still a disk. Like how does anybody below our generations know that the save button is that silly little disk? You know, but yes, that was just a little side note. Somebody asked in the chat for the digital access and equality for student statement. That's in here under resources. And then we have, I'm thinking about how to enable tools. I think, I'm trying to remember where it's at. How you add it as an assignment, into an assignment, as an external tool, all those different things. I'm not finding it immediately here, but it is in here somewhere. I'm just not, I'm not connecting the dots here. In any case. Wow, see, we're running short on time again. We just, we enjoy talking about this stuff. So thank you for bearing with us. Okay, my slideshow is showing now, right? Yeah, and go ahead, John.
Yeah, so I just showed you guys how if you go to settings, right, and you add one of those apps that are there, you just need the key and the secret, right? And that's just how you install the app in your class. So for those, and then we walked through, also Jody walked you through using the navigation to enable a tool that we already have installed. So sometimes you might install a tool and it'll be off by default. So you still need to go to the navigation and enable it. These last two pieces I wanted to talk about was the assignment part and the module part. And this is kind of where that level of score or grade pass back happens. So when you create an assignment, and if you look at your submission type, forever, most of us use online, right? And then from there, they can use the rich text editor, they can upload a file, they can do whatever they want, right? Well, if you choose external tool, you're going to get a list of all those apps that we have installed in our system. So if you want your app to do that specific assignment, and if your app is capable of that, I'll use Flipgrid for an example. So you can have a chapter 1 homework assignment built in Flipgrid. You can go into Canvas and you can say chapter 1 homework assignment. And when you go to submission type, if you choose external tool, you can pick Flipgrid. And it's going to ask who you are. You're going to log in, you're going to flip over to Flipgrid, and then it's going to say, which assignment is this? And you'll say chapter 1 on Flipgrid is chapter 1 in Canvas, and you'll hit go. So then when the student comes into your class, they click the button to assignment 1, they go interact with Flipgrid, and then all that link comes back to Canvas. You go into SpeedGrader, you open it, you can see their flip, and you can score it right there in SpeedGrader, hit submit, and it records it in the gradebook, right? So each level of vendor, those are different. So that example applies to Flipgrid, right? It may work that way for Perusall, it may not. It may work that way for Vista's higher learning, it may not, right? So it really, that's where I need you to really lean on either your support rep from your book or publisher or those groups, because they're going to know those little intricacies that I'm not going to know, right? So if you come to me like, John, does this do the other? And I don't know, let's reach out to them, right? So I think if you can get that information like ahead of time, it really just helps us with the whole process, right? So, and then the last little piece there is the module, and that's like a real popular one. If you're inside of modules, when you add an item to modules, you can add an assignment, you can add a quiz, you can add a file, all that stuff. Well, if you add external tool, you can get the link to your publisher website, to Flipgrid, to those things built right into your modules. So if you do have your students going step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 3 can be out to your app, out to your publisher website, out to where you need to go to do that other activity. Come back to step 4, step 5, step 6. So yeah, so moving forward, if you guys need help. Oh, you're gonna talk
I'm driving.
more.
I'm driving. I pushed the gas rather than the brake. Sorry.
Yeah, so this is kind of like the dream, right? Because every one of these apps is different, and the longer we work with them, the easier they all seem to get, and the more, because of the standard, that key and secret, it seems to be easier and easier for all this stuff to happen. So with that, because there's so many apps, there's no way that myself, our department, even the technology support services on the campus, there's no way all of us can even keep up with it, right? So that's where we need to lean on you as the faculty to really lean on the vendors or the application or the group that you're working with for those support materials, right? Whether it's webinars, whether it's just PDFs, whether it's, if you get an install doc from somebody somewhere, send it to me. Even if you're able to install it yourself, like just, closing those loops and keeping all that communication happening, I think is like the most important part. Then, Flipgrid's one thing, my IT lab's a different thing. One is like an app, the other one's the book. It's what the student has to interact with in the class. So the level of support that we find from publishers and books is usually a lot higher than what we find from just the app, right? The apps, I think there's more people like me on campus and our peers and all the people that we know that have dealt with the apps, and we can like kind of lean on and be like, hey, what did you do in Zoom to get around this issue? Or how did you record your attendance, right? We can bang those ideas around and stuff. But those publisher ones, I mean, you really have to lean on that publisher. And the things that I've found is really, it's at the department or the division level, right? You really get that group of people that get their teeth into it. They really get familiar with it. They have it all dialed in. Then they're able to share it amongst peers. And that's happening, and our office doesn't even know about it. And that's great, right? So when people do reach out to our office, it would be really nice if we'd be like, oh, you're working with that group of people? Well, did you know that so-and-so is really in with the My IT Lab group or whatever, So I think, besides doing what we're doing to like build in this policy and like build this department change too, it's also building in that communication and that like relationship stuff to be like, it's more than just support. There's a little bit more than just, training involved, but we're all focused on the same thing. So let's just get all that stuff figured out, get it dialed in, make Canvas work the way we want to go.
We've found that our department tries to separate out who can help you with what. So if it's about access, that's usually TSS and John's area. If it's about function, how do I use this app? What buttons do I push? How do I enable speech to text, right? The function of it. For the user, then that's more instructional design, our facilitator team, etc. So those are really the two categories, right? How do I download or upload this, and then how do I use it effectively? And what we have missed in the past is how do I use it for students? So we're pulling that all into one area so that when you have information on Flipgrid, they have information on Flipgrid too. And so you don't have to give them all the instructions. You can use the ones we've provided. So that's how we're trying to help support you. As John was going through all those steps, I think we probably lost some of you. The boot camp workshops, exercises that we have, we go through all those details. So breaking it down from access and the implementation and then the function of using it. So we hope that will help. So this is the rubrics for analyzing apps. If you want to have a look at them, this is that Edu App Center. I actually had it on our references, John. The Edu App Center is right here. So with that, we are done. I want to thank you all for coming. And if you do have some questions, if you want to stay on, or if I missed some of yours, I've tried to manage it all. I'm happy to do so. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day, and we may see you in another session. I love this. We're spending the day together. Thank you, everyone.